When I was 18, I did a gap year with Youth for Christ. I joined a creative arts team. It was called Activate. We did a bit of drama. I did a bit of rapping. I also did a bit of singing, which I don't know why they let me do that. And I did a bit of dancing. But all the evidence of that has been destroyed or locked in an underground cave. So you will never get to see what happened in that year. But I joined that year excited about what God was going to do in me and through me. I was excited about growing as a leader, as reaching people and telling people about Jesus. I came quite confident. But it was the first time that I'd ever lived outside the city of Liverpool. I'd obviously been outside of the city and been on holiday and visited places and stuff, but it was the first time I'd lived in a city that wasn't my own. And it was the first time that I realised in my life that I had a Scouse accent. Because up until that point in my life, everybody talked normally. Everybody talked in a way that I talked. Everybody went at the end of a sentence, and life was normal. And then I moved to Gillingham in Kent for this gap year, and I realised that people talk differently in different parts of the country. I realised that down there, that they don't pronounce their T's and they keep their mouths open. They go, all right, mate. And it was weird. And then I moved to Birmingham. And the less said about that, the better. But, I didn't realise that I wasn't normal. And I came into Youth for Christ and moved out of my city and moved down south and was part of this gap year, and I was excited and really enjoying it. And, after a couple of months, I got settled in, and around November, December, these little thoughts began to come into my mind and into my heart. And I began to think that people didn't really like me. I began to think, actually, all people see when they see me is some joker, some loud, gobby Scouser who thinks he's all that. And it was just a little niggling thought. But then over the Christmas period, I began to feel even more different. And that voice began to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And through January and February, it became a real deal for me. That I genuinely thought that everybody around me thought I was just some idiotic Scouser who was just a joker. And in March, we went to this mid-year retreat, which was basically a retreat in the middle of the year. And on the way to it, I made a decision. And I thought, I am not going to give anybody any more ammunition to not like me anymore. And I'm not going to give them reasons to go, oh, he's just a cocky, loud Scouser. I thought, I'm just going to be introverted. I'm going to stay out the way. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to hang out with one or two people. I'm not going to make a fuss. I'm not going to crack any jokes. I'm going to keep myself to myself because I don't want people to not like me. So that's what I did. For 3 or 4 days at this retreat, I did it and kept myself to myself, kept quiet. A lot of people going, are you all right? Are you all right? So, yeah, I'm fine. On the last night or so, somebody gave a talk and I felt like God challenged me. So I went forward for prayer, and this guy called Paul, he came and prayed for me. And after finishing praying for me, he said, Andy, I think God wants me to say something to you. And he said, God has called you to be you. And God has created you with your personality and your characteristics to use in a way that he's not using anybody else. He said, God wants to use you to reach people that nobody else in Youth for Christ is reaching. And he is going to use you in a different way to the way that he's using other people in this ministry. And you need to embrace it. And that day, God really spoke to me. That was like something that I hadn't spoken to anybody about. I hadn't shared it. But God knew I was tormenting myself with these thoughts that I needed to be someone that I wasn't. And God spoke to me. And can I be really honest? It's not dealt with. Like, those feelings come up in me. Those feelings rise up in me. As a youth pastor, I go to conferences and hang out with other youth pastors, and I sit there sometimes in meetings comparing myself to other people and going, man, I'm just a loud, cocky Scouser. Or, I sit in meetings and I crack jokes and I give ideas and I'm me, and then all of a sudden I leave the meeting and I go, oh, I wish I'd been quieter in that meeting. I wish I could not be who I am. And I have to come back to that place and remind myself what God said to me over 15 years ago. Andy, I have called you to be you. You need to live your best life. I've not created you to be like anybody else. I have given you the personalities and the characteristics to do what I have called you to do. And I have to regularly come back to that. And I think we all do this. We all compare ourselves to other people. Let's not be naive and say this is a young people's issue or a young adult's issue. All of us carry these things of comparison in our lives that rise up. And I think God wants to do something significant in us today. I think God wants to speak to those things in us that rise up, that make us feel insecure, that make us feel like we're not as good as anyone else. And I really hope and pray that God does speak to you through what I'm going to say this morning. Theodore Roosevelt, or Teddy as his mates call him, says this: comparison is the thief of joy. When we compare ourselves to other people, when we look around and go, well, I'm not as good as them, or they did that and I didn't do it as good, or they're doing that, I could never do that, I'm not as good as them. And when we look around our office or our school classrooms and we compare ourselves, it robs us of the joy that God wants to give us in life. It robs us of the joy of who we were created to be. When we look around and we constantly compare, it robs us of the joy that we're supposed to have. And I want to open up the theme of comparison by looking at one of the most dysfunctional families in the Bible, and it's the family and the story of Jacob and Esau. Now, if you're a Christian, you will probably know where this story goes. If you're not a Christian or you're fairly new to the faith and you've never heard of Jacob and Esau, you are not going to believe what we are going to look at. This story is amazing and mind-blowing and terrifying all at the same time. And it appears in Genesis 25, and we're going to read it together on the screen. It says, the babies jostled each other within her. Now, this is talking about Rebekah, who was Jacob and Esau's mum, and Isaac was their father. Isaac's father was Abraham. Abraham and Isaac are known in the early bits of the Bible as two incredible men of faith, two incredible people who were leaders in God's chosen people. And it says, the babies jostled each other within her, and she said, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the elder will serve the younger. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. That's going to be really important, that last sentence later on. But here, you've got Esau, and he's born, and he's red, and he's hairy, and therefore he is called Esau. And then you've got Jacob, because he comes out holding his brother's heel, he gets called Jacob. Now, if you read the Bible in paper form rather than in iPad form, sometimes there's like a little asterisk in the Bible, or like a little italic A or B or whatever, and then you go down to the bottom of the page and it tells you what's going on. And when I look in my Bible, it says a little asterisk by Jacob's name, and then at the bottom it says means heel grabber or deceiver. And this moment where Jacob is born, he's born grasping his brother's heel. And because he was grasping his brother's heel, that is the name that he is given. Aren't you tired of moments and mistakes and failures defining our lives? Moments that happen and that is just spoken over us for the rest of our lives. Labels that we carry that were from a single moment, a single mistake, a single season, a season of failures. You know, I was watching a YouTube video of a guy who 5 or 6 years ago, he came out of a football ground, his team had lost, he was furious, a camera was pointed at him, and he said some things that were horrific, and he shouldn't have said them, and used bad language and said all these kind of things. And in that moment, he regretted it. And this interview, he said, for the last 5 or 6 years, those 11 seconds have defined my life. Things that we do are spoken over us and we carry them around. I remember in years 7, 8, and 9, I was a pain in the backside in school. I was trying to be the funniest. I was trying to be the hardest. I was trying to get on with everybody. I wanted everyone to like me. I was back chatting to teachers. I was getting all sorts of attention. I was locking teachers in cupboards. That's a story for another time. But I did loads and got into loads and loads of trouble. But at the end of year 9, when I was about 14, I made a decision that I was going to take God seriously. I made a decision that I was going to follow Jesus with everything that I had. And I basically just got up the next morning and said, I'm going to try and live for you today, God. And I tried, and in year 10 and 11, I was trying to live for God. But the problem was, the name that I had created for myself in year 7, 8, and 9, I couldn't shake off. And teachers would view me with the lens of who the old Andy Hanky, oh my word, I can't even say my own name. Teachers would view me with the lens of who the old Andy was, rather than who the new Andy was. And I couldn't shake what had defined me for the last 3 years. And so often we carry stuff around us that define us, that it defines us, and it can become our story. And you know, we naturally compare ourselves to other people. And these two, Jacob and Esau, are compared right from the start. You've got Esau who's red and hairy, and you've got Jacob, who's a little heel grabber and a deceiver. And they're compared to each other right from the very start of life. And it's something that we all do. You look around and you'll compare, you'll go, oh, well, their outfit's not as good as their outfit, or he's not as good as that person, or maybe you're even doing it now and you're going, oh, this is a good talk, but it's not as good as last week's. And we naturally compare, and we naturally pitch one thing against another. And you know, it's really unhelpful, not just for us in our own souls and our own hearts, but for the people that we are comparing. We can pick up so much when people compare us from one to the other. And we see it here with Jacob and Esau in the next bit. It says, the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. See, one parent loved one more, and the other loved the other more. And it says there, Jacob was content to stay among the tents. Now, there's a conversation between scholars. Some people think that that was him being lazy, and he couldn't be bothered, and he was content to just sit around all day in the tents. Others say he could have been studying. But either way, you've got Esau, who's this big, butch, manly, skillful hunter provider, and you've got Jacob, who's a skinny little mother's boy who likes to sit around and be a geek and study. You've got this comparison right from the get-go. Right from the beginning of their life, they are compared to each other. How different might this story have been if rather than going for competition, they'd have gone for collaboration? What if they'd have gone, oh, Jacob, you're really clever and really good at getting these things and understanding these, and Esau, you can go out and hunt, and let's work together so we can do better together. Why don't we aim for collaboration rather than competition? You know, we need to make sure that we're doing that we're not pitting one thing against another, but we look to collaborate rather than compete. A guy called Paul, who's wrote most of the New Testament, the bit in the Bible that's after Jesus, and he's writing to people who are early Christians, and he's writing to people in a place called Philippi, and he writes this in Philippians 2. It says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. That's what collaboration looks like. That's what working together looks like. Not trying to one-up each other, but looking to go, how can I help you? How can we work together? We need to feed collaboration rather than feeding competition. And let me say, parents, go for that in your kids. Please don't bring comparison into your kids' life. Please drop the phrase, why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you be more like your sister or your cousin? Like, let's not compare our kids, but let's feed in them collaboration. Let's feed them in to be the person that God has called them to be. Let's call out their best characteristics rather than the things we wish they were. You know, our world is full of natural comparisons, and we probably see that most is in the world of advertisements and the world of social media. Social media and advertisement thrive on our feelings of inadequacy. Adverts go, oh, you've got the latest Apple product. Here's a new one. Would you like it? And like your adverts are communicated at us to make us feel like our life will be better if we have those things. And you know, social media, we can sit and we can scroll through social media and we can look at these filtered and edited to perfection photos, and we can look and see that these people have perfect lives and we don't. I found a poem about social media that is just highlights what it is like on social media. It says, I know a girl whose one goal was to visit Rome. Then she finally got to Rome, and all she did was post pictures for people at home, because all that mattered was impressing everyone that she's known. I know another girl who's crying out for help, but her latest caption is leave me alone. I know a girl happily married till she puts down her phone. I know a girl that saves pictures from places she's flown to post later and make it look like she's still on the go. Look at the way we live. You know, I want to say to you, don't compare your version of real life with somebody else's online controlled content. Or if you're not on social media, don't compare your version of real life with somebody else's controlled content. Don't compare your stories and your backstage with everybody else's highlight reel. Because what it does is we constantly compare and we look at ourselves and we come up short. You know, the dysfunction in Jacob and Esau's relationship continues. And Esau, because he was the firstborn, is due to get the blessing from his father. He's like to take on the throne, even though there's not really a throne. But he's the one that will lead the family when Isaac is dead. And what happens is this moment is Esau is out hunting, and Jacob is at home preparing some stew, and Esau comes home starving, and we're going to have a look at what happens. It says, once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. That sounds like a teenage boy, doesn't it? I'm starving. That's like me at like 1:30 on a Sunday. I'm exactly like that. Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank and got up and left. You see, in this moment, Esau trades what is most important to him for what's right in front of him in that moment. He literally trades his birthright, his future, for a bowl of stew. That is stupid. See what I did there? Thank you. Here all day. And you see, Leon opened this up brilliantly for us last week. And if you're listening or watching online, or you're here and you didn't catch Leon's talk, honestly, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. It was phenomenal. And Leon talked about see a fly, want a fly, eat a fly. And here, Esau finds himself. He sees a stew, he smells the stew, he wants the stew, and he eats the stew. And in this moment, he gives up what is most important to him to what's right in front of him in the moment. Andy Stanley puts it like this. He says, don't trade the ultimate for the immediate. And when we compare ourselves, when we find ourselves in this tension of wanting what we don't have, we want to trade the ultimate for the immediate. We go for that relationship that we shouldn't go for because we've compared ourselves and we feel like we're insecure and we just feel like we want someone to make us feel better, and we trade the ultimate for the immediate. We do it constantly. We trade our moral values for what we want right in front of us rather than keeping our morals high. You know, we all live in that tension, don't we? And we compare ourselves to others and come up short, and that can be really tough. And this, for Jacob, is the start of him trying to be somebody that he's not. It's the start of him pretending and trying to live not his best life, but his older brother's best life. And the story goes on, and Isaac gets really old and begins to lose his sight, and Isaac realizes that the end of his life is coming. And he knows he needs to hand on the blessing to Esau. So he says to Esau, go out, hunt, get some meat. We'll have a nice meal, and I'll pray for you and bless you, and then you'll be like the leader of the family. So what happens is Esau goes off and he goes hunting, but Rebekah overhears what happens, and she goes and grabs Jacob, and she says, now is the moment. Go in there and steal the birthright, steal the blessing. And here is what happens. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob has gone in. He's pretending to be his brother because his dad can't see very well anymore. He's dressed up like his brother. He's covered himself in like mud and blood to make him smell like his brother. He's wearing a goat skin so he feels like he's hairy. He's dressing up and pretending to be his brother. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother, so he proceeded to bless him. You see, Jacob here, he pretends to be someone he's not. And I think so often, so many of us can get so good at pretending to be someone that we're not, that the people closest to us can't even see it. Or maybe we have gone for so long pretending to be something or someone that we're not, that the people closest to us don't see it. And what's mad is after getting the blessing, Jacob can't stay in the house of his father. He gets the blessing. He's blessed by his dad. But then Esau finds out that he's robbed his blessing, and Esau is looking to kill him. So Jacob has to flee. Like, what good is the blessing if he can't stay in his own house? I don't know whether you've ever wanted something so much, and when you've got it, it's not been as good as what you thought it was going to be. I remember years ago on the radio when I lived in Manchester, I won tickets to the VIP opening of Krispy Kreme donuts at the Trafford Centre. And I was well excited. I was buzzing. It was all-inclusive donuts, so I was going to go home looking like a donut. And they said the cast of Coronation Street were going to be there. The cast of Hollyoaks were going to be there. I was a single guy at the time. I was thinking, I'm going to meet my future wife. Like, I was doing a bit of acting. I was like, I might get a job out of this. Like, I was like, this is going to be unbelievable. This is going to be life-changing. I got there. There was some free donuts, but there was no cast of Hollyoaks. There was no cast of Coronation Street. The biggest celebrity that was there is a guy who'd finished 6th in Big Brother the year before. I was gutted. I was like, this is not as good as what I thought it was going to be. And you know, how can we live our lives? What good is it for people to accept us for something that we're not? That if we're so scared that if we reveal who we really are, if we reveal our vulnerabilities and our weakness, they'll run a mile. That is not a blessing that's worth having. My main point is this, that you'll never be happy pretending to be someone that you're not. You'll never be happy pretending to be someone or something that you're not. Or put another way, God can't bless who you pretend to be. God can't bless you when you're pretending to be something you're not. You know, we can cover ourselves with all this makeup. We can cover ourselves with the right clothes. We can get the right job, the right car, the right pictures on Instagram. We can put these filters up that make us look like a dog. I don't know why people decided that dog filters make people look more attractive. We can do all these kinds of things, but we can't fool God. God knows who we really are. And really, you know who you really are. You can't fool yourself. You can fool those around you. You can fool the people that are closest to you, but you can't fool yourself and you can't fool God. You see, what we've got to do is come and be authentic and real before God. God can't bless your profile picture that's been filtered and edited to perfection. God wants to bless you, the real, authentic you. And what happens in the story is Jacob has fled and years pass, and we have what comes up as what's called a theophany, which is basically God appearing in human form or on the earth. And Jacob has this moment and this night where he wrestles with this man who's thought to be God, and he wrestles with him through the night, and it's a challenge and it's a struggle. And what happens is that Jacob's hip is wrenched out of its socket. And Jacob is limping, and he's hurt, and he's been wrestling. And this is what happens. It says in Genesis 32, "Then the man said, 'Let me go, for it is daybreak.' But Jacob replied, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.'" Here he is, Jacob. He's being the heel grabber again. He's getting closer to being himself again. He's going, "I'm not letting you go until you bless me." He is gripping on, and he's going, "I'm not letting go of you until you bless me." And as a side point that's not really to do with comparison, but when we find ourselves in seasons, sometimes we feel like God has let go of us. God does not let go of us ever. Sometimes we let go of him. And in seasons where life is tough, where life is hard, where life is heartbreaking, where we're in that mess and that uncontrolled chaos, we just need to grip on like Jacob grips on here. And I love what somebody said a number of years ago in our church who was bereaved. They said they came to church and they couldn't sing and they couldn't put their hands in the air, but they just knew they had to get in the way of God. They had to come and say, God, I need you to bless me. I need you to speak into this. I need to meet with you. They got in the way and said, God, you need to flip and bless me here. And maybe some of us just need to be like Jacob and grip on and say, God, I'm not letting go until you bless me. I'm not letting go until you speak into this circumstance, until you speak into me. God, I'm not letting go until this changes. And then it goes on to say in verse 27, it says, what is your name? The man asked. He replied, Jacob. He's taken the mask off. He's taken the filters away. He says, I'm Jacob. This is who I am. I'm the guy that nicked my brother's birthright. I'm the heel grabber. I'm the deceiver. I'm the one. I am Jacob. I am me. If you want to live your best life, it starts with being comfortable with who God created you to be. It starts with being authentic. It starts with letting God speak truth in who he created you to be. You see, Jacob stops pretending to be something he's not because he's realized that you'll never be happy pretending to be someone that you're not. I'm confident that I am the best Andy Hancock that you will ever meet. I am the best in the world at being Andy Hancock because I've had a lot of practice at it. Now, you could shave your head and you could talk with it all the time and you could pretend to be me, but you will never be as good at being me because you weren't created to be me. You were created to be you. And I was created to be Andy Hancock. And, at our Easter production, I had a little moment where I lived the dream and I got to pretend I was in a boy band and I got to sing. And, I could pursue trying to be a worship leader, but that would only be painful for everybody else in the room because I am not able to sing. And I know that that's not my calling. That is not who I was created to be. So I'm not going to waste time pursuing something that's not me. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be who God created me to be. God has shaped my personality and my character to be something that he wants to use. And I'm not being arrogant, okay? I'm not going, oh, this is me, take it or leave it. I am what I am. I'm not saying that. I know God is working on my character and shaping me to be the best version of me that I can be. But I want to encourage you, if you're going to live your best life, it starts with living your life. Not somebody else's, not comparing yourself, not trying to be someone that you're not, but being who God created you to be. Let's not look to compare and compete. Let's look for collaboration. Let's look to be comfortable in who God made us, who God created us to be, and I think we can see amazing things happen. If you're not a Christian, if you're a person that's new today or new to faith or you're exploring it, let me say, you don't have to have it all figured out to follow Jesus. You don't have to have answers to all the questions. You don't have to have solved this problem in your life or sorted that or stopped doing that thing or whatever. You can come to Jesus as you are. You don't have to have it all sorted. You don't have to be perfect. God's not after perfection. He's after people that are willing to follow him and no matter what and be themselves. God will take you from where you are and lead you to where you need to be. And that's how you live your best life. And it's great because the man who's thought to be God blesses Jacob and he says, then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. God changes the game for him. He literally changes his name. He says that season in your life is over. You are no longer the deceiver. You are no longer the heel grabber. I am doing something new in you. I'm doing something new in your life. I am taking your life and I'm leading it to where I need it to be. And that's what God does. When we're real, when we're authentic before him, he takes us and he leads us to where we need to be. And, I love hearing people's stories. That's why I love baptism Sundays, when we get to hear people come and share what God's done in their life. And it was amazing to see 7 young people out of the 14 people getting baptized that shared their story, and it was incredible. And I've taken some of Kieran's story because it just highlights what I'm trying to say. He said, God has done new things in me. Instead of fear, I have freedom. Instead of weakness, I have strength. Where I walked in the dark, I now shine in the light of Christ. Where I had hate, I now have love. God has changed me in so many ways. He is my light in the darkness, my way maker. That's what God does. He changes the game for people. And we're going to fast forward the story a little bit and look into the next book of the Bible, because the Bible's not one book, it's a collection of many books. And in the next book, the book of Exodus, God is trying to persuade Moses to step up to be a leader. And he's trying to convince him and inspire him. And he's trying to say, Moses, you're going to do amazing things. And he's trying to inspire him. And he says this to him in Exodus 3, if we could have it on the screen. It says, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am, which means God, has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, who was Jacob's granddad, known as an incredible man of faith and a really incredible leader, the God of Isaac, again, an incredible leader, someone who God loved loads, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Jacob. I thought God changed his name. I thought God had changed his name and said, you're no longer going to be called Jacob, you're going to be called Israel. So why does years later God say to Moses, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? Why not the God of Israel? I think God's trying to communicate something to us through this. And band, I wonder if you could come up in this moment. I think what God's trying to say is, I'm the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac, these incredible leaders who had mountaintop experiences, some of them literally. They had these incredible moments and they were incredible men of God. I am their God. I'm also the God of Jacob, the heel grabber, the guy who robbed somebody else's blessing. See, God is not just the God of our good moments. God is not just our God when we gather together on a Sunday and we worship him and we feel great. God is the God of our mess. God is the God of our low moments. God is the God of our mistakes and our failures. God is the God of the moments and the mess that we create. You see, God is not after perfection. He's after hearts that are willing to be themselves and to follow him. He wants to turn the thing that has held you back, that thing that has defined you for so long, that thing that has been spoken over you. He wants to take it and turn it for something good. He wants to change the game for you. He wants to take that thing that as you have carried, maybe even for so many years and decades. God wants to say, I want to take that, I want to turn it, and I want to use it for your glory. I want to use it to get you to where you need to be. Have you ever wondered how the cross, the symbol of the cross, became the symbol of Christianity? Me neither. I hadn't anyway until I was reading a devotion that I've been doing by a guy called T.D. Jakes. And he shared this story, and basically in the early church, in the early days of the Jesus movement, the Roman Emperor Constantine, he had become a Christian, and his mother had as well. His mother was called Helena. And Helena went on this pilgrimage and this journey and this mission to find the original cross of Jesus. And she scoured the earth looking for the original cross that Jesus died on. And eventually she found what she thought to be the original cross. And by that time, the cross was a little bit battered and splintered. And so what she decided to do was take chunks of it and send it to the people in churches all around the world, to send it to people who were trying to follow Jesus or needed to be encouraged. And these chunks of the cross went all over the world and encouraged and inspired the church to keep going. And what they did is they took those chunks of the cross and they made little crosses of them. And the thing that was meant to kill the Jesus movement, the thing that was meant to symbolize death, became a symbol of hope, became a thing that bounced the church forward. It was a catalyst for the church being even more impactful. And T.D. Jakes put it like this: an artifact of atrocity was turned into an icon of adoration. And I believe that's what God wants to do. That's what God is in the business of doing. Taking our hurts and our pains, the people that we have pretended to be, and we come and we're authentic before Him at the foot of the cross, and we say, God, I need you to do something in my life. And God takes those things and He turns them for His glory, and He turns artifacts of atrocity into icons of adoration. And I believe that's what God wants to do today. And in a moment, we're going to take communion. So if the guys who are going to be doing that could get themselves into place. We've got stations all around the room. The bread is gluten-free bread, so you don't have to worry about that. But what I want us to do is take a moment to respond. And we're going to sing a song that's called "Here's My Heart, Lord, Speak What Is True." And I want to give us an opportunity today to be real before God, to take off the masks, to take off the filters, and say, God, here's my heart. I've been pretending to be someone or something that I'm not. And this isn't a youth or young adults issue. This is a people issue, something that we all struggle with. I still struggle with this today. And we come before God and we say, God, would you take my mess? Would you take my pain? Would you take that thing that has defined me for so long? And would you begin to do something? And for some of us, it will change in a moment. For others, it's a slow process. But it all starts with being authentic and being real before Jesus.